All too often, we find our lives controlled by impulses and urges and addictions and habits, and we feel oftentimes as if we are not actually truly free. You know, addictions are deep and tangled, and they evolve over time. Like almost everything in our lives, addictions and habits are not static. What might start out simply as a curiosity can become a conditioned response, and then even a compulsion, and then we might find it as a heavy chain that isolates and even seems to destroy our lives. So a question we might ask is it possible that we can experience change? Can our thought patterns adapt? Can our choices change? Can the power of a bad habit, can it be broken? And can a bad habit be replaced with a good habit? I believe so. I believe that God has created you and me, our brains, with an incredible power of change. And so we'll be looking today and at the next 4 sessions as we meet every Tuesday evening in the month of September. We'll be looking at principles that can help our brains adapt and change. You know, every human being is engineered for success. God has designed you for excellence. And when you experience spiritual renewal, physical recovery, mental and emotional restoration, there is hope. We'll be looking at all of that type of development: spiritual renewal, physical recovery, mental and emotional restoration. Your spiritual life and your mental life and your physical life are all really intertwined. And to experience true freedom from habits that hurt, we need to experience growth in all 3 of those areas. Now, some years back, and I think I'm looking around, I think all of us were born back in 2005. Were we alive in 2005? Okay, we all were. Excellent. In 2000, this morning I was giving a presentation to some elementary school students, and none of them were alive in 2005. But we were. That's great. In 2005, you may remember when Hurricane Katrina just walloped the Gulf Coast, came ashore and decimated the city of New Orleans. It was one of the largest hurricanes to make landfall, one of the largest storms to impact the United States. Winds of up to 174 miles per hour. And we remember that superstorm and the impact that it had on New Orleans. You know, $125 billion in property damage from Hurricane Katrina. And 15 million people were displaced by the storm. You know, not too long ago, I met somebody in our community who moved here to the Otsego area after Katrina. He and his wife lived in New Orleans, and after the storm, they decided, we're not going to go through that again. You know, a snowstorm is one thing. A hurricane is a completely different animal, and they moved up here and haven't had a hurricane yet, living in Michigan. But you know, the most devastating consequence of that storm wasn't $125 billion of property damage, even the 15 million people displaced. That's a human toll. But what was especially awful was 2,000 people lost their lives in Hurricane Katrina in 2005. Just a terrible, terrible disaster. You know, a storm-ravaged city like New Orleans really suffers from 2 major challenges. There's a damaged infrastructure. And when the infrastructure is damaged, that makes it incredibly difficult for life to continue. When the roads aren't passable, when the electricity isn't coming to your home, when you don't have fresh water, all of those damaged infrastructures lead to weakened defenses. Suddenly, a city becomes very vulnerable. And it's not just the city, it's the people who become very vulnerable to danger. When the infrastructure is weakened, when the infrastructure is damaged, The defenses are weakened, and the city becomes vulnerable. You know, it's the same way with us. When our infrastructure is damaged, is weakened, our defenses are damaged as well. And so when a city goes through something like that, when New Orleans and the other cities of the Gulf Coast experience from Hurricane Katrina, all of the plans for improving the city suddenly go out the window. You know, the art installation downtown that the mayor and the city council are thrilled about suddenly is irrelevant. You know, have you ever had, because, well, we're in survival mode, right? Art is not important. Getting fresh water and getting electricity back on in the hospital so that those premature babies in the NICU can survive, that becomes incredibly important. We're in survival mode. And maybe you have felt from time to time as if you have been in survival mode. There's no option for anything extra. It's simply making it to the next day, maybe making it to the next hour, making it to the next minute, making it just one moment longer. You know, a broken city has ceased normal function, and it has to switch to survival mode. A city needs renewal, restoration, and repair, just like we need when we find ourselves in survival mode. You know, in the Bible, Proverbs 25, verse 28, the Bible says a person without, what's that those next two words? A person without self-control is like a city that is broken down and without walls. God uses this analogy, this illustration, that a person without self-control is like a city that is broken down and without defense. And when we lack self-control, we lose our ability to make good decisions. The brain, well, that's where we make those choices, isn't it? The brain is the center of decision-making. What kind of challenges can hinder healthy brain function? We know that broken city, thinking of Katrina again, illustrates what the reality is of a broken brain. Stress. Stress can adversely affect healthy brain function. Stress. Depression. Depression shuts down the healthy brain function. What about bad habits? Definitely, bad habits adversely affect healthy brain function. Addictions. Addictions certainly do as well. You know, there are three major influences on your brain. Three major influences. One of them you can do nothing about. Absolutely, categorically nothing. Now, that's not very encouraging, is it? If there are three primary influences on your brain, and one of them you can't do anything about, that's a whole third of the influence on your brain. But here it is, it's genes. You can't do anything about your genes. You were born, now I'm not talking about your jeans you might be wearing, no, I'm talking about, genetics. You were born with your DNA coded, your genetics determined when you were born. You had nothing to do with that, and you can't do anything to change your genetics. And your gene structure, they influence so many things in your life. They dramatically influence your diet, your lifestyle, exercise. They even influence the way you think. Your genetics influence so much about you. But here's the good news. While your genetics is 1/3 of what influences your brain function, your brain operation, the other two you can do a lot about. Here's the second one. The second one is environment. You can think about your internal environment and your external environment. Your internal environment is how you think. How you think. Your patterns of thought, that's your internal environment. And your external environment is what surrounds you. It could be the people who surround you, the house you live in, the city you live in, the stores you shop at. Your external environment is what surrounds you. Now, God has a plan, and He has the power to change your brain. And one of the tools God uses to change your brain is to change your surroundings, your environment, your life. Both your internal environment, the patterns of thought that you have, and your external environment, what is surrounding you. Genes, environment, and choices. The third powerful influencer of your brain activity are the choices you make. Every day, you make choices. You make choices to think, you make choices to do, and that impacts your brain. You may have heard it said, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. That's a biblical statement, in fact, isn't it? Yeah. How we think impacts who we are. So every day, you and I are presented with opportunities to make choices. And the choices we make influence the health of our brain. And even, get this, while you can't change your genetics, the choices you make can impact how your genetics impact you. Every choice that you make improves the health of your brain or decreases the health of your brain. But every choice you make to improve the health of your brain improves the health of your body. Your brain is part of who you are, part of your body. You know, the good news is that you can move forward, and you can continue moving forward, even if your brain has been hit by a hurricane-level Katrina-class storm. You may be affected by stress, depression, negativity, bad habits, addictions. Even if you have faced in your life a disabling storm, but you simply want to improve your brain function and your health, these principles will help you in that. And even if you haven't, maybe you've sailed through life 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and you haven't had any negative impact in your life. Everything has gone perfectly for anybody like that? Okay, well, we don't need to talk about that group of people, do we? But even if you don't feel as if you've been bowled over by a devastating storm, the principles we'll examine will help you even thrive more in your life. Rebuilding a broken city requires a plan, and rebuilding a broken brain requires a plan as well. Dr. Norman is a psychiatrist. He's the author of the book, The Brain That Changes Itself, and he has this to say, an astute observation about the nature of our brains. The brain is far more open system than we ever imagined, and nature has given us a brain that survives in a changing world by doing what? By changing itself. Now, I don't think nature gave you that brain. I believe a creator God designed your brain with the ability to adapt and change. Your brain is constantly reshaping itself according to what it learns, what it's exposed to. We call this plasticity. Plasticity, that's a term that neuroscientists use to describe that remarkable ability our brains have to adapt and to change. Your brain has an incredible ability to adapt and change. Here's a question. Do you think little kids or octogenarians have a greater ability to change? Who do you think has a greater plasticity of brain? Yeah, the kids. I mean, they got one over on us, don't they? Kids have an incredible ability to adapt and to change. But even if you are 120 years old, or feel like you're that old, your brain is still remarkably plastic. It has a lot of plasticity. It has the remarkable ability to adjust and to change and to adapt. And the principles we'll be exploring today and over the next few weeks will give you the tools you need to help your brain adapt in a very healthy and productive way. You know, we think about habits. Habits, we all have them, don't we? Habits are our friends. Habits are our friends when they're good habits. Good habits are our friends. Elbert Hubbard has said that habits are the great economizer of energy. Now, some of you, and I won't make you raise your hand, but some of you have the habit of when you get up in the morning, you drink a glass of water. I do that every morning. It's one of the first things I do. Drink a glass of water. When I was a kid, my dad he got up earlier than my brother, sister, and I did, and he would go around and he would set on our nightstand for each of us in the morning a glass of water. And sometimes he would even squeeze a little lemon juice in it. And he wanted to help instill in us a habit of drinking water first thing in the morning. That's a habit. I do that every morning. One of the first things I do, I go get a drink of water. That's a habit. And that habit is a friend of mine because it helps me stay hydrated. I have a habit of brushing my teeth after I eat. You know, I don't do it after lunch. But after breakfast and after supper, I brush my teeth. I guess maybe I should pack a toothbrush with me when I go to the office. Some people do, but that's just not my habit. You probably have a habit of brushing your teeth as well. Habits are simply routines that help us, now, we're going to say repeat safe and effective behaviors. That's if it's a good habit, right? There can be bad habits as well, but a good habit is a routine that helps us repeat safe and effective behaviors and builds consistency and security into our lives. Habits help us feel safe and secure. And when you have good habits built into your life, good routines built into your life, it actually frees up your brain for focusing on other important tasks. So in the morning, I don't have to think about staying hydrated because I'm just going to drink that glass of water. In fact, I have a habit when every time I walk into the kitchen, I get a glass of water. Now that also means that I get to visit a little room in the house quite frequently as well, but I guess that's okay. You know, there are certain habits that are like luxurious vines. They destroy the trees they decorate. Abraham Lincoln reportedly said that. There are some habits that destroy the trees they decorate. That's what addictions are. Addictions are strong, but the weapons available to win the war against addictions are even stronger. As in any war, it's important to have a plan, a strategy for battle in order to overcome and achieve a decided victory. In this case, the enemy is that habit that is stealing your joy, energy, and life. Now, you can probably think in your life of habits in your life, addictions perhaps even, that steal your joy, your energy, and your life. And you have a lot of people today that have a habit of scrolling through Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, and most people do not find that is something that betters their life. Most people find it actually robs their joy. And yet, it is a habit, maybe even an addiction, for many people the world over. We want to be honest about the patterns of behavior in our lives that are negatively and adversely affecting us. You know, addictions are like a virus, a deadly virus that takes over your life. Now, we know something about viruses, don't we? COVID-19, that was I guess it's still out there, a virus that, let's be honest, it took over our lives, didn't it? Whether we wanted it to or not, whether we actually had the virus or not, it took over our lives. And addictions are like a deadly virus. They take over our lives. Addictions take you where you don't want to go. Addictions keep you longer than you want to stay and cost more than you want to pay. You know, God alone knows the hidden chapters of a person's life that lead to brokenness and addiction. Here at this seminar, Living Free, this is a no judgment zone. Wasn't there some television personality who had a no spin zone? His TV show, he called it the no, was that Bill O'Reilly or something, the no spin zone. This is the no judgment zone. The habits and addictions that have gained control of your life, I don't know the painful experiences and the brokenness in life that have led to you being susceptible and vulnerable to those habits or addictions gaining a foothold in your life. But God does. Amen. And God looks at you with compassion and love. I think of the woman who the religious leaders of Jesus' day dragged before him and threw at his feet and said, "What are we going to do with her?" And they thought she needed to be stoned to death, a death penalty. And Jesus just bent down and started writing in the dust, and all the accusers melted away. And Jesus looked up and asked her, "Where are your accusers?" And she says, "They're gone." And he says, "Neither do I condemn you." Amen. That's the God we have. He does not condemn. He understands your brokenness and the challenges of life that you've experienced. God understands. Each of us has an opportunity in the choices and decisions we make, how much we allow the experiences of the past to control our lives and determine our future. You know, addictions are about broken connections. They're broken connections in the brain. They're broken connections with others. They're broken connections with life principles. And most importantly, I really believe at the heart of every bad habit and addiction, there is a broken connection with God. God longs to bring healing and restoration in our lives. You know, in the past, when we thought about addictions, we use that word addiction usually to refer to problems with substances. So, like alcohol. Somebody could be addicted to alcohol. Or maybe somebody would be addicted to nicotine. Or maybe to some other type of drug. But, you know, the reality is that drug use is not a necessary and sufficient cause of addiction. In other words, it's possible to have an addiction without some substance being involved. You know, it may be that you're struggling with an addiction that involves a substance, alcohol or nicotine or some sort of drug, but it's also possible that you may be experiencing an addiction that is not connected with an external substance. We know that addictions also, here from Howard Schaffer from the Division of Addiction at Harvard University says it is important to consider drugs, it is improper rather, to consider drugs as the necessary precondition for addiction. There does not have to be drugs involved for there to be an addiction. There doesn't have to be an external substance. The reality is that we can be addicted to all sorts of realities in our lives. You know, an addiction simply includes a persistent compulsive behavior that is harmful or destructive, characterized by an inability to stop. Now, what addiction do you think the slide is suggesting? Collecting paper bags, right? Or no, shopping, that's right. That could be an addiction. If it is a persistent compulsive behavior that is harmful or destructive, characterized by an inability to stop. You know, why is it the Home Shopping Network is $1 billion plus business? Because there are many people who watch and buy whether or not they need. I remember visiting somebody, and if I'm describing your house, it's not because I'm thinking of your house. I remember visiting someone far away from here. And this dear person, I walked in the house. This individual was addicted to shopping. It was from the Home Shopping Network. This individual had numerous, stacks of unopened boxes. Hadn't even opened the products that had been shipped. She eventually, in some conversation, says, I think I've probably only opened a quarter of the shipments of what I've purchased. But I've got to buy. I see something and I've got to buy that. That's an addiction, right? No drugs involved, no substances involved, but simply still an addiction. So we think about these key characteristics of an addiction. It is a persistent compulsive behavior. It's harmful or destructive, and it's characterized by an inability to stop. We could probably think of a lot of addictive behaviors, but let me just put a few on here. Food. Food can be an addictive behavior. What about pornography? That can be certainly an addiction. Gambling can be an addiction. I have a family, my grandmother was addicted to gambling. She mortgaged the house. She owned her house free and clear. Mortgaged the house. A second mortgage on the house. She loved going up and playing the slot machines, gambling. What about shopping? We've already noted that one. There are many addictions that can be in your life or mine. You know, once a person has experienced addiction, changes have taken place in the brain that involve multiple brain circuits. Did you realize that addictive behavior, an addiction takes hold of you by actually remodeling your brain, changing your brain? Bad habits hijack our brains, and our good intentions are dashed by drives that take you where you don't want to go, and it takes a strategy or a plan to reclaim control of that runaway behavior. You know, if you think you have an addiction, especially if you have an addiction that involves the use or abuse of substances, whether it's illicit drugs or legal drugs, alcohol, whatever it might be, it's really important that you work closely with your healthcare provider. Have a conversation with your doctor, your nurse practitioner, if you realize that you have addictive behaviors in your life. You know, the reality is often there are conditions that need treatment. Oftentimes there can be physiological or underlying health issues that need to be addressed. And so please have a conversation with your healthcare provider. You know, God has designed the brain. Even the adult brain. Remember we were talking about kids, their brains, their plasticity is much more malleable. Their brains are much more malleable than ours. But God has designed the brain, even the human brain, the adult brain rather, with a powerful capacity to reshape itself, learn and grow new connections. And so God has designed your brain with the ability to change for the better. Addictions and habits rewire your brain, and God gives us the tools and the ability to undo that damage and to rewire our brains in a healthy way. But we need a strategy, we need a plan. This is good news. This is good news that God has given our brains the ability to grow, the ability to change. Attention is a mental state that allows us moment by moment to choose and sculpt how our ever-changing minds will work. Attention, what you and I choose to focus our minds on, allows us to change and sculpt our brains. Those choices are embossed in a physical form on our material selves. What you and I choose to focus on, to think about, the thoughts we have actually rewires our brains. And so good habits can become just as persistent as bad ones. You know, doesn't that sound like the kind of rut we'd like to be in? If you're going to be in a rut, wouldn't it be good to be in a good rut? If your life is going to be directed by habits, wouldn't we want them to be good habits? Good habits that are guiding us and helping us to have a life that is healthy and thriving. Dr. John Ratey is a psychiatrist and addiction specialist from Harvard University, and he puts it like this. Well, it did seem that we missed his quote, didn't it? Well, whatever the good doctor had to say, we're not going to read it. What we practice, that's what we become. What we practice is what we become. And what we don't practice, we lose. And most of us can think of some bad habits we'd like to lose, and we'd like to lose them like our keys, and we never find them. You know, I was looking for something this morning that every time I do something in my workshop, I'm having to move because it's in the way. Today, I needed it for the first time in 3 years. And do you think I could find it? Absolutely not. I could not find it. I looked all over. I could not find it. There are some things we'd love to lose. Bad habits are some of them. And to lose a bad habit, it does take determination. It takes work. I would say it takes prayer. It takes support from others. And there are times, yes, it takes medical intervention. Again, having that conversation with your healthcare provider is important. But enduring change for the good is the result. And that is certainly something worth striving for. How many of you would like to experience positive change in your life? You'd like to lose a bad habit for good and develop a good habit to take its place. I want to share with you some broad keys to living free. You know, and it's really a lot more. Living free is about more than quitting an addiction. Living free is really about a total health lifestyle intervention that will help you achieve and maintain even your healthy weight, reduce sickness and disease, develop strategies for dealing with stress, how to improve your mental health and even, yes, your spiritual health, how to grow in a positive way your relationships and connections. Potent, powerful, and protective weapons are available to help you achieve and maintain a life of living free and to do it for good. Does it sound too good to be true? It's not. It sounds pretty close, doesn't it? But indeed, it is possible. Creation living is a strategy for living a daily life of progress and healing. You know, the reality is we're never static in life. We're either improving or we're regressing. We're never staying static. And creation living is a strategy for always living a life, a daily life of progress and healing. It involves character growth. That sounds kind of difficult, doesn't it? Character growth? Oh, it involves character, but that's an important one. It involves conduct. Character is who we are, right? So this involves growth in who we are, our identity. Conduct, those are the choices we make. And connections. Connections are the relationships that we have with others, and even it could be relationships with inanimate things. Now, I'm not kind of weird and kooky here when I'm saying relationships with inanimate things. We can have a relationship with food, right? Or we can have a relationship with technology, or we can have a relationship, you get the idea, right? It's what we're interacting with, oftentimes on a daily basis. And so let's look at 4 areas of growth that we will be exploring through this series, and we'll be coming back to these again and again. And they're really important for our growth and truly living free. First of all, create an environment. We're going to be looking at keys for creating an environment that is conducive to healthy growth. An environment that is conducive to healthy growth. An external environment, so we'll be examining your environment. We'll be giving you some questions to examine your external environment. That would be your surroundings. Are your surroundings conducive to healthy growth? But also your internal environment. Who you are and what you're telling yourself. I remember a guy who said, be careful what you tell yourself. You're pretty stupid and you're going to believe whatever you hear. Be careful what you tell yourself. Now, you're not stupid. He was saying that to me. But the reality is we do believe what we tell ourselves, don't we? And so it's important the messages that we're sending ourselves. That has to do with an internal environment. But also, we're looking at creating a lifestyle. A lifestyle is simply the pattern of choices that you make in your life. And the pattern of choices you make in your life can have a tremendous impact on your mood, your memory, learning, cravings, behavior, and even chronic conditions like diabetes, obesity, heart disease, dementia risks, etc. My family has a history of dementia. My grandfather had Alzheimer's and had early onset Alzheimer's. There have been some dementia challenges in other members of my family. And my wife has challenged me to make lifestyle changes that will hopefully delay my becoming a host for dementia. I'm sorry? Or prevent, yes. And so there are choices I can make, and the reality is they're little choices, but they have to be daily choices. And if I develop, and I'm working on introducing and integrating those healthy choices as habits into my life so that I can hopefully avoid something down the road that can make a tremendous impact. A healthy lifestyle, the consistent ongoing choices that we make. We want to look at creating connections. Connections are powerful. Connections are powerful. And we are hardwired for connections. I'm a pastor, so I like to bring biblical principles in. You know, back at creation, God made Adam, and what did God say to Adam? It is not good for you to be alone. I'm going to make someone else for you. It is important for us to have connections. Connections are powerful, and we want to foster through this seminar positive connections with God and with others. Addictions are isolating. Think about that. Most addictions are isolating. And overcoming addictions involves a sometimes painful process of severing harmful connections and replacing them with healthy, healing relationships. Relationships that foster health and positive habits. You know, we're born with a need for a saving, healing relationship with God. And I believe the cornerstone of positive change in our lives is knowing God. There's another key, and that is situational awareness. When I think of situational awareness, I think of a guy named Dave Grover. Dave Grover was a member of mine at a church I used to pastor, and he's a retired Navy SEAL. And he liked to talk about situational awareness. Situational awareness is simply knowing what's going on around you. Knowing what's going on around you. And using hindsight, insight, and foresight to avoid traps that will cause a fall. You know, if I'm walking up here and I'm going to go up onto this platform, I need to be aware of a trap, right? A little bit of foresight, looking ahead of me, is going to help me know I need to step up and then step up again, right? Or else I'm going to trip. Hindsight is simply remembering your past. Hindsight is remembering your past. Insight is what you know, and foresight is the ability to predict trouble in the future. So we're going to look at keys for heightening your situational awareness, helping you to have good hindsight, insight, and foresight. You've heard the saying, practice makes perfect. Well, practice also makes permanent. Practice makes perfect, practice makes permanent. When it comes to developing good habits and making good lifestyle choices that can help us experience freedom from addictions and bad habits, practice makes permanent. What we learn by doing. God has designed your brain to continually reshape itself according to what it learns. And He promises His power to accomplish in you a determination to break free from destructive habits. Intentional faith, positive attitude, and choices restore the brain. Healing takes place with time and perseverance. You know, the habits and addictions that have developed over a lifetime, those are not going to change in 1 hour. Change, healing, takes perseverance and time. Today's choices yield tomorrow's gifts, healing brain-body systems that are stuck in a rut. So the perseverance to press in, press on, and press through your situation is one of God's miracles. It doesn't feel splashy, but it's the real miracle. The positive change you long for in your life will come through persistent time and effort. And God promises you that with Him all things are possible. There is power for your joy, power for your journey and joy even in the healing process. So here are some first steps. You ready? Maybe you want to take some notes here of these first steps. Here are some first steps that can help you begin building better habits. Now here's the wonderful thing. When you begin to build better habits in one area of your life, it will impact better habits in another area of your life. So there may be some of these suggested first steps, and you say, that's not going to do anything for what I'm dealing with. But developing better habits in one area of your life is going to be a powerful foundation for developing good habits in another area. In fact, it's a good thing to start building good habits in an easy area and experience the reward of success and growth that you can celebrate, and then apply the skills and the perseverance and the motivation that's been gained from developing a good habit in maybe an easy area to then tackle a habit, developing a good habit in a more difficult area. So here it is. Drink more water. Drink more water. You might say, well, I drink probably 2 or 3 ounces of water already a day. No, drink more water. Start your day with a good glass of water. Drink water throughout the day. It may be you say, you know what? I'm going to replace other beverages with water. Here, someone's taken advice already. Came prepared. How do you know we would talk about water, John? You brought a water bottle. Drink more water. Eat more fresh fruits instead of pastries and candy. Now, we like pastries, don't we? Oh, we like pastries and candy. Who doesn't like candy? But here's a tip. Just begin implementing in your life eating more fresh fruits. Drinking more water, eating more fresh fruits. I mean, what is your favorite fruit? Does somebody have a favorite fruit? Strawberry. Oh, I love, you said strawberries, right? I love strawberries. That's one of my favorites. Somebody said what?
Black cherries.
Black cherries.
Peaches.
Oh, peach. Yes, there is nothing better than a good peach, except a good mango. Peach pie. I don't know about, fresh. That was the key. Fresh fruits. Fresh fruit. I did have a fresh peach pie, though. Someone made a fresh peach pie, and it was the crust. She had baked the crust, and then she cut fresh peaches on, and then topped it with whipped topping. Wow. And it was a fresh peach pie.
You can't grow mangoes in your backyard.
No, we can't grow mangoes in my backyard, so I might have to go with the peaches.
You may like them, but you got to go buy it.
That's right. Get walking or some form of exercise every day. This is powerful. Research has demonstrated that physical activity, consistent physical activity, has a tremendously positive impact on brain function.
Looking for the mangoes.
Yeah, looking for those mangoes. I'm going to be walking a long time looking for those mangoes. Get walking or some form of exercise every day. That's one of the healthy lifestyle habits that I'm integrating into my life to try to forestall picking up Grandpa's Alzheimer's. That's just a reality. Exercising every day. So drinking more water, eating more fresh fruits, get walking or some form of exercise every day. It doesn't say you have to go run a marathon, but just some physical activity. There's tremendous power in that. And then I would actually add a fourth one, which is reach out to God. Could I share with you something that makes God a real active presence in my life?
Sure.
Every morning when I get up, I drink that glass of water and I open my Bible. And I read a little bit of God's Word. I believe the Bible is God's Word. And it makes God real and close in my life. I spend a little time praying. Amen. Reaching out to God. 4 simple first steps. Drink more water. Eat more fresh fruits. Doesn't say you can't have that donut, but just eat some fresh fruit, right? Get walking or some form of exercise every day and reach out to God. And as you begin to develop these positive habits in your life, it will set you up for success in tackling addictions and bad habits and developing good habits in the more challenging areas of your life. You know, there's a Bible verse, Isaiah 57:18, I have seen his ways, speaking of God's, or rather God seeing ours, and will heal him. I will also lead him and restore comforts to him. I believe God wants to be your coach, your cheerleader on this journey to being a more healthy you. God himself will help us recover lost ground. He will help us remap our brains and habits to embrace a lifestyle free from destructive habits. You know, this lifestyle is simple, healthful, energizing to mind, body, and spirit, thinking of this creation lifestyle, that it will be a real building block in what we examine in this series. It's learned over time, so be patient. Learned over time. As you begin to integrate these positive choices into your life, and as we explore in our upcoming meetings in more depth some of the thought patterns and looking at some of the tools that can help us overcome addictions, you need to be patient. Give yourself some time. Don't be too hard on yourself. But you can today make a choice to begin this journey of becoming the you that God wants you to be and you want to be. Of finding freedom from addictions and habits that are controlling your life and replacing those with healthful habits that unlock your potential and fill your life with joy. I believe that's God's plan for you. Would you like that to be your plan for you? Absolutely. Well, I want to challenge you with just a few questions as we wrap up. Now, here's my promise to you. These meetings will be 1 hour long. How long?
1 hour.
1 hour. So, we have 10 minutes to wrap up. We're going to end at 8 o'clock. And we've had some folks who have joined us remotely through a live stream. I'm going to ask the folks back in the audiovisual booth to go ahead and discontinue that live stream. Those watching from home, we loved having you join us. We're going to head into a few minutes of discussion. And if someone wants to share, if you want to say something, we don't want that to be something that people outside of this room are able to hear or see. So that live stream is being discontinued. And hopefully those who have joined us via live stream will join us next Tuesday.